Since the Colorado Midland's closure in 1918, the Midland Terminal had been using the tracks of the Colorado Midland from Divide to Colorado City. With the scrapping of the Colorado Midland, the track east of Divide became part of the Midland Terminal. Now, Midland Terminal trains would start their journey in Colorado City and proceed up Ute Pass to Divide, where they would return to their ancestral rails to complete their journey south to Cripple Creek. Life settled down to a daily ore train that left Colorado City in the evening. Crews assembled in the afternoon at the roundhouse. Each locomotive gathered some of the cars for the trip, and one coupled onto the caboose.
What was the fare on the old passenger train up here? $2.75 one way. And what was the time schedule on it? The fastest time was 2 hours and 20 minutes from the Santa Fe Depot to Cripple Creek. 2 hours and 20 minutes, and how far was that? 56 and 9/10 miles. I believe somebody also said that somewhere along in that track they had about a mile-a-minute schedule. Where was that? That is from Cascade to a little station called Culver. Did they do it? Not very often.
3 to 5 locomotives were needed to pull 40 or 50 empty cars to the district. There was an occasional bit of freight to be hauled in as well.
Well, then you've been associated with not only this railroad, but the old Colorado Midland Terminal and the, let's see, the short line, and what was the other one up from Florence? Florence to Cripple Creek. I worked on all those roads. I also worked on the Walmart Road. Well, which would you say you got the most out of? What way do you mean? Financially or thrill? Well, either one, Len. Let's see. Let's go back. Let's go back to about 1903. What were you doing then? 1903, I was just starting in railroad. Maybe you better explain that phrase, then. Well, I was taking care of the engines, following crews, and lining up the suburban runs in the Cripple Creek district. However, that only lasted about 30 days. When I went to Divide, was hauling down there for about 2 months. Well, let's see, was the old Midland Terminal in operation then? The Midland Terminal, yes. That's where I originally started, was on the Midland Terminal, which run between Divide and Cripple Creek. It was only 30 miles long. And that hooked on to the, what was that, the Colorado Midland that ran up from Colorado Springs? Colorado Midland run through Divide. That was our connection point at that time.
At Cascade, the train already needed to stop for water. So difficult was the several-hour climb up lower Ute Pass. Each locomotive had to be spotted under the tank and watered.
Well, how did they handle those trains at those water stops, Tom? For instance, when they had a bunch of coaches over the hill down below that they couldn't see. Whistle signals. Each engine, when he gets through taking water, he whistles 2 long whistles. And the next engine pulls up and takes water, and all 5 engines in the train has water.
The empty train rounded the curve behind the Divide depot. Now, on original Midland Terminal rails, the train stops for water once again at Midland before starting to climb toward Cripple Creek. The town of Gillette, named after William Gillette, an original officer of the company, had been planned as the main shops of the Midland Terminal. Gillette was always a cold place, and none of the employees missed the days when the Midland Terminal was active here. There is little left of Gillette, with the decline of gold mining and the railroad shops now in Colorado City. Winding around Blizzard Point, the train passes Cameron and is in sight of the station lights at Bull Hill around midnight. Much of the bustle of Bull Hill remains just as in the glory days of gold mining. During the day, the Cripple Creek switch engine had been threading its way through the 25-mile maze of track in the district, gathering loaded cars to be sent to the mill. High-grade ore was once hidden away in locked and guarded boxcars. The switcher arrived at Bull Hill in the afternoon. It left loaded cars to be carried to the Colorado City mill by tonight's ore train. Empty cars left by last night's ore train, as well as any inbound freight cars, were moved to their destinations. The train of empties usually left Bull Hill in the middle of the night. The locomotives coupled onto the loaded ore cars and headed for Colorado City. The train made slow progress. Loaded train had to be broken into pieces at Midland to be moved one piece at a time to Divide, where it was reassembled.
I believe somebody mentioned about doubling a train. Now, what do you mean by that? That's where we can't handle all of our train, and we have to take half it to another side track, then come back and get the other half. That was we do that at between Midland and Murphy on Berner every trip. When we was handling 1,600 ton out of Bull Hill, and there's three small engines, original terminal engines, and the third engine would always stay at Gillette and wait for the train to come back. This particular morning, it must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning, Glenn was sitting on the right side, about half asleep, and I was on the left side, in about the same condition. All of a sudden, I said, you've seen two fellas raise up. As we heard the most mournful wail that I have ever heard in my life, and at that time of the morning, it was, well, just a little more thrilling. And I was come to find out there was a mountain line around our engine. And that was one morning that the little 57 didn't get oiled around at Gillette. They expected to run on the bank in Cripple Creek, and they picked up $100,000 in Colorado Springs at the Santa Fe Depot. And they wanted the money in Cripple Creek just as soon as they could get it there. The general manager came down and told me about it. So we started out, and we went from the Santa Fe Depot to the Cripple Creek district in an hour and 15 minutes. That is something very unusual for speed in those days.
Was that over? That was over the old short line of...
That is on the short line railroad. In 1905, the Midland Terminal leased the short line, and then when we all went over there and worked on the short line.
The train reached Colorado City in the wee hours of the morning. A switcher would take the loaded cars, a few at a time, to the mill, returning with empties for the next night's train. This simple routine repeated for decades. The railroad and the mining district struggled through the Second World War. Once the war was over, the district reawakened. The Midland began to modernize with newer locomotives and cars. This proved to be of no value. A new modern mill, the Carlton Mill, was built right in the district just north of Victor. The railroad was no longer needed to haul ore. Since it hauled nothing else, it was to be scrapped.